you.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We know that the Taliban entered the capital of Kabul on Sunday night and have seized power of the country, of the entire country of Afghanistan. At this point, they have declared the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan from the presidential palace. US completely pulling out of its embassy, evacuating its diplomats from the rooftops with helicopters, took over the Kabul airport, and it allowed its diplomats and diplomats from other countries to flee the country. There is chaos in Afghanistan at this point, specifically in Kabul, from the reports that are coming in. But there are some serious questions that we have to ask, along with all of the other comments that have come in from across the world. There's an interesting comment from China that says, and I quote, that it wants and is open to building friendly relations with the Taliban. Also, we understand Imran Khan made a statement today within another topic that he was talking about on education, where he basically said that Afghanistan has broken the shackles of mental slavery in some way, looking at the Taliban as some sort of deliverance for the people of Afghanistan. Diplomatically and from a point of view of international relations, where does this leave India, given the geographical advantage of China, Pakistan, and in Afghanistan now ruled by the Taliban? To help us understand what all of this means, we have a wonderful guest, Mr. Pinak Ranjan Chakravarty, former Indian ambassador and the secretary to the Ministry of External Affairs, currently visiting fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. Mr. Chakravarty, good evening, and thank you so much for giving me your time. I really appreciate it. A lot of the reports said that while most countries expected, or the global community expected, that the Taliban would gain some power after the US withdrew, the fact that it would happen so fast took the global community by surprise. Is that what you see as well, if we look at the visuals of these countries evacuating their personnel?
Yes, I see it that way, because the Taliban leadership itself is saying that we did not expect this. Now, it's clear to me that they have broken all the agreements, most of the agreements that they had made with the Americans at Doha. It seems to me otherwise this could not have happened. They must have given some assurances to the Americans that, we'll wait for you to leave, because that's what the intention, that all foreign forces should leave. But that did not happen. They broke that agreement and obviously came and captured Kabul. I do not know why they broke the agreement, but clearly they did. And that is why you're seeing all that chaos at Kabul airport. And the evacuation process has not been completed. And the Taliban, of course, is now saying that it will allow this process to continue and will control the crowds, etc. They have offered to the Americans. The Americans, of course, put in more soldiers to control the airport so that these flights can continue. The Taliban also probably prefers that the Americans do it and all the foreigners leave, because they don't want to get into more trouble. Because if something happens to the foreigners, then the international community will obviously come down pretty hard on them, particularly at a time when the UNSC is having its meeting, and currently it's going on actually, where a lot of views are being expressed. But that's another matter. Let's come to China.
Yes.
China, of course, has this the contiguity, geographical contiguity north of the Wakhan corridor. And so I think there, and the other major concern that China seems to have is that because these are jihadists and Islamists, and they have this Uyghur connection as well, the ETIM, or the East Turkestan Independence Movement, which is the Uyghur Muslim movement in Xinjiang, where China has imprisoned about 1.5 million Uyghurs. They call it re-education camps. That's typical communist sort of philosophy. But basically, they are in a restricted place and they can't do what they want. And they are being indoctrinated and told to forget their religion, etc. So I think China is playing this game because it has the money, firstly. So there is this BRI and all this money they can give. Afghanistan is fairly rich in minerals and some rare earths as well. which the Chinese covet, the Chinese companies. And thirdly, I think their fear of the Taliban coming back and Afghanistan becoming another sort of gathering place of Al-Qaeda, other Islamists and other organizations who, by the way, reports that are coming saying they are celebrating that Taliban is back in power. So those are the things that should worry China. And that is why they have been in contact with the Taliban to persuade them and maybe to give them, show them some money and carrots so that Taliban does not help the ETIM and other groups that China calls terrorist groups. The Taliban delegation which went to Beijing did promise that, but
Yes.
I don't know how they will deliver it or how they can control their own country to an extent that they can say that, yes, we will be able to prevent such act, prevent these people from harassing China in Xinjiang.
Mr. Chakravarty, the Taliban made many promises during their negotiation with the Americans in Doha, with the Afghan government, which they've overthrown now in Doha. They talked about how they want to continue to offer women equal rights. They talked about how they want to continue, they want to be seen as a government and not, as a terror ruler, which is how they were seen earlier. But the visuals of all of these countries now evacuating their stuff suggests to us that the global community doesn't believe a word of these assurances. Is that how you see it as well? That nobody believes that the Taliban, there's no evidence for us to believe that the Taliban has changed its spots to stripes.
I agree that there is not much evidence, although the Taliban understands global propaganda better now, obviously with the help of their Pakistani advisors. So their leaders are saying some very nice things about, don't worry, we will not do anything. It is, we'll allow, girl children to study, to work, etc. And but the reports are that they are now going door to door and trying to create lists of those who worked with the Americans or the Afghan government and what they are going to do. I think they're going to seek revenge, and some of them will be executed, like they did they already executed many people in Kandahar and some other places. So it is difficult for me to visualize a group like the Taliban, which is rooted in a very medieval ideology, and they have already declared an Islamic emirate, which I don't know whether the international community will accept an Islamic emirate. But it's up to them. I suppose they will declare it, and that was inevitable that they would do so, with their leader being called Amirul Mu'mineen, which is really the leader of the believers, it's a very Islamic kind of thing. And so I don't know what's going to happen. My sense is that they will make certain concessions this time because they don't want to be treated as a pariah nation, and they are interested in somehow getting some recognition from some countries. But the problem which they really have is the economy. Afghanistan's economy is in the gutters, and there's no revenue flowing except from opium cultivation. Where are they going to get the money? It was the Americans and the others who were funding them. In fact, funding their budget.
Is this where China comes in, Mr. Chakravarty?
This is where China comes in. But China is a very mercantilist nation. They don't roll out money for nothing, and so they will demand concessions. And in terms of the ETIM that I have already spoken about, that you will control them. And secondly, they will demand, in material terms. I mean, things like you give over this mine to us or allocate certain mines to us, etc., from which they can make the money. I doubt if China is going to dole out $4 billion to them for nothing, which is.
You did talk about the fact that the Taliban has now declared the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. And we don't know whether the global community has now a choice of accepting the Taliban as a formal government, which means that you have relations with you have your embassies or not. And there is some nomenclature questioning here because people are asking this question now. NDTV, for example, refers to the Taliban fighters as Taliban terrorists. Several other news organizations call them Taliban fighters. Now we know that Al-Qaeda was declared a international terror outfit, but the Taliban was not. Would you explain to us now, what is the Taliban? Is it a terror outfit? Is it a government? How will the international community see it?
Taliban is a mixture of both. I mean, some people will call them Afghan nationalists, and that they were fighting to evict foreigners from their country. But I think the earliest mistake they did was that by hosting Al-Qaeda, who conducted all that 9/11 operations from there. And the Americans also first requested the Taliban leadership that please hand over these people and hand over the Al-Qaeda leadership to us, and you expel all the other groups. They refused. Mullah Omar refused, saying, no, this is Pashtunwali. I mean, that they are our guests. How can we do it, etc. And then the story, the story after. So that's what happened. And I do not know whether they will continue to take that line with the Al-Qaeda elements, ISIS elements, and others. Probably not, because they realize that if these guys again mount some strikes from Afghan soil, their fate might again be the same. The second Taliban 2.0 might again. So I think they'll be wary of that. They are interested in power there, and they want to stick on there. Pakistan, of course, will take, you had asked me about Pakistan, now I can turn to Pakistan if you like. And we'll obviously take advantage of this situation. The Taliban will be grateful to Pakistan to a certain extent for having funded them, trained them. There are even reports that Pakistani irregulars and retired and other, and of course the Lashkars and all those the jihadists that have been nurtured and brought up by the Pakistani establishment, army mainly, who have been sent to help them. There are even reports of serving army officers helping them with whatever logistics and others. So all these things are there. So Pakistan is obviously celebrating that their effort for the last 20 years, and Hamid Gul, their former ISI general, has very ironically remarked that we have defeated the Americans in Afghanistan by using the Americans. So I think it says it all. I mean, which is what everybody has been saying.
So does India have enough to worry about? Because now the entire neighborhood becomes unstable. Insurgency, the possibility of insurgency between Afghanistan now having the Taliban, Pakistan led by Imran Khan, who was popularly in Pakistan known as Taliban Khan, and then Kashmir. Is this a risk for us? Is this something our government is likely to be worried about right now?
There's obviously a risk if you go by what happened last time when the Taliban was in power. Pakistan had sent off all these terrorists that they wanted trained in Afghanistan, so that they could say, "Oh, there's nobody here, and we're not doing all these things." And from there, they would be then funneled into various places, including Jammu and Kashmir. Now, whether Pakistan is going to repeat that and Taliban is going to accept that is another question. Taliban has been saying that India should remain neutral. We have nothing against India. Even on Jammu and Kashmir, somebody had asked them, they said it's an internal matter of India. And they have also said that India is welcome to continue with its development projects. And it should not worry about, we will not harm anybody, any Indian. These things they have said. I mean, but who knows? I mean, does Taliban keep its word? Well, we have seen how much word they have kept. They will, of course, be harsh on their own population, particularly the women. They will impose Sharia law. The Islamic emirate, they've announced the emirate, which means that Islamic law will also be imposed. And they will probably try to settle down first because the leadership is now returning to Kabul. So they will announce various sort of portfolios, etc., that they will do. But the problem is that the skilled people are trying to flee. Those who have the skills to run the government, etc., are trying to flee. You've seen at the airport what is happening. And these are all basically those kind of people who don't see any future for themselves or fear a lot of retribution coming their way. And so they are the ones who are trying to flee. So the fear of the Taliban is there. And I'm afraid this will cause a lot of refugees in the neighboring countries. And even, I suppose, many of them will want to come to India. India already has a large Afghan refugee population. Then, of course, the minorities, although Taliban again has said, not to worry, we will not do anything to the minorities. But as you know, there is a minuscule Hindu and Sikh community there. And I think the government of India, as some ministers have been expressing the view that we should help them come back, etc. And so that is the situation at the moment. We are unable to do anything on the ground, anything. We cannot prevent it. The Americans couldn't prevent it. The Americans made a very, very strategic error by engaging the Taliban. I think it was done by Trump, not Biden, to be fair, when he announced a date of withdrawal and then started engaging the Taliban in talks. Taliban knew the die had been cast, that the Americans want out. And hence they refused to give too many concessions, or whatever concessions they give, they have now overturned on all of them. So I think this is the fatal mistake by the Americans. If I were an American diplomat or a policymaker, it's okay. I can understand American psychology and their public opinion saying 20 years, whatever trillions of dollars and lives lost. What the hell are we doing there? And why should we fight this war? It is not our responsibility anymore to build that state when the state refuses to be built. I mean, Afghans are a different kind of people. They're steeped in their tribal culture, religious, very conservative. You saw what's happened to the Afghan army.
Mr. Chakravarty, sorry, very quick question. Do you think it is likely that the American intelligence, structure, which is fairly formidable, would not have been able to guess how quickly Kabul would fall, how quickly the Taliban would take over? Because now what Joe Biden faces is an extremely grim 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, where effectively they've handed the country back after 20 years to the very enemies that they fought to begin with. Shouldn't they have, don't you expect that there would have been some change of gear? Maybe they could have slowed down their exit. They didn't respond to the Taliban at all on the ground.
So that's what I was saying, that they shouldn't have given a date of withdrawal. They could have engaged the Taliban, saying, look, we will only withdraw once we have a proper watertight agreement. But Taliban knew that they had given a date. And what President Biden has done, that he has overturned a lot of Trump's decisions, but this one he didn't. Because he also realized that the public mood in America is against this war. And as a politician, he stuck to that agreement. But again, the deadline, he said, he in fact moved the deadline further upwards, and gave the Taliban another blank check. Look, we are going. You do what you like, despite all the agreement. That's the message the Taliban actually got, that we can enter into all these agreements, but these are meaningless. We can overturn them as soon as we capture power. The intelligence failure seems to be fairly severe. They said 90 days that it would take. And Biden himself has gone on record, and there are clips going around saying, he was asked a question, that he said, no, Afghan army will fight. They are well trained, etc. But the Afghan army just dissolved and just went away because I think they were also compromised to a large extent. And they were not trained to fight this kind of Taliban. I think they were used sporadically by the Americans. The kind of training that the Americans were giving them was not probably meant for this kind of warfare. I doubt it, because otherwise no army just disappears. The Afghans themselves were probably divided, and many of them thought that it's better to. The Taliban also gave them inducements, like you lay down your arms, etc. We have nothing against you. They used their own diplomacy to disarm these people. And those who even surrendered, some of them they killed. So that message went to the other Afghan soldiers that this is what's going to happen to us. I mean, if we do. And they were dispersed in different parts of the country. So and the Taliban was coming from all over. I mean, it was like a flood that was, encircling these little military bases, and the rural areas were falling to them because there was nothing in the rural areas to protect these people.
Also, we understand that millions of dollars worth of American equipment, Humvees, vehicles, drones, arms and ammunition have been handed over by the Afghan army to the Taliban. But the question I really want to ask you before we run out of time is this, and my audience is asking the question as well. Who has the responsibility now to look after the human rights of the women and the children of Afghanistan who are likely to suffer the most? I mean, the strides that the women have taken over the last 20 years in Afghanistan, voting, working, going to college, attending university, the idea that they will be put back in the burqa, locked back behind their homes again. Can the UN step in? Does the UN have that ability? Can anybody do anything at all? Or are they to be left at the mercy of the Taliban?
I'm afraid one thing all your viewers must understand that in international politics, it's pretty cold-blooded, and human rights and all are good things to say. And of course, in normal times, human rights are a good flag to wave and protect, etc. But when it comes to brass tacks, human rights are become collateral damage, as the Americans use the term. Now, take the Americans for themselves, who wave the flag of human rights. Look at what they have done all over the world. I mean, if you really look at their record in Iraq, in various places, and once Madeline or somebody was asked that there were 2 lakh children died in Iraq because they couldn't get food. So one of them, these Americans, said that, it's collateral damage. It was worth it. This is the kind of attitude you will get when it comes to their interest, to their own interest. And so most nations behave like that. Not always, but most of them do. And but there are other nations who have other values, who will take moral posturing, etc. But when it comes to your clinical interest, you just set it all aside. So I don't think the Americans will be too bothered. They have left Afghanistan, and let the Afghans deal with whatever they have. And I think the international community, the UNSC, will pass some resolutions. It will sound very good, but what can the UNSC do? Will they send troops? Will they send a UN peacekeeping force there to enforce whatever they want to be enforced? I doubt it very much. The UNSC, I'm afraid, is deeply divided, and it has become a talking shop, and not much. I don't expect much.
Mr. Chakravarty, the question that lies before India right now is whether it is going to acknowledge the Taliban as a government and have a conversation with the Taliban. We know India doesn't talk to terrorists, but is the Taliban then a terror organization, or is it not? And we have also spent the last 20 years investing heavily in rebuilding Afghanistan into a democratic country, because that is in our interest to have.
Yes. Yeah, we have invested and we have made investments in certain things. I doubt if they will be destroyed or anything. Every country needs schools. No, these are all physical infrastructure based and training, which they come to India and they take. So I don't think that's an issue, and India will be willing to do it again if there is some semblance of normality in that country. But I think we'll finally have to take a decision whether to deal with this Taliban government. And of course, earlier in other countries in the neighborhood, we have dealt with whoever is in power. So if you believe in that policy and concept, you might as well deal with the Taliban. And so that is the situation now. Faye, I need to leave now.
Yes, I know the time we agreed on, but thank you so much, Mr. Chakravarty, for answering our questions. It is, of course, a difficult decision that lies before India, but I thank you for your time. Thank you for explaining the situation to us. For our audience, we have a report coming up at 9 o'clock that puts together all the stories of what has played out in Afghanistan over the last 24 hours. Do take a look at that. Thank you for watching. Good night. Like, share, subscribe to this video, guys, and tell your friends and family to subscribe to our channel as well. It helps us grow if we have more subscribers. Thank you for watching. Good night.